So the pink one, who was a leg, was a dude. Andrew. And this is Gayties Toys. On today's MIA 80s Ladies, we're going to be looking at multiple characters from a franchise that I barely have any kind of passing familiarity with. I was familiar with them back in the 80s, certainly saw prototypes since, but never saw the show. This has been, a real education and a fun one because we actually have some good news mixed with some sad news near the end. Spoilers. In any case, let's just get right into Bo, Boo, and Ohno from the Mighty Orbots. The Mighty Orbots was a 1984 cartoon, really kind of, cashing in on the popularity of other, better known robot franchises going on at that time. In 1984, the market wasn't quite as flooded. However, the robot market certainly was. The setup for the show was really set in the 23rd century, where humans and robots and other alien races all live together under this sort of United Planets Star Trek Federation of sorts. Galactic Patrol is around to keep the peace against particularly Lord Umbra and Shadow Organization, which is sort of the ne'er-do-wells intent on, crime, galactic conquest, who's to say. In order to combat Shadow's rising threat, Rob Simmons, a pretty hunky little engineer, scientist, inventor, creates the Mighty Orbots in response. And they're essentially a number of robots who combine, kind of Voltron style, we'll get back to that, to take on greater threats. Among the robots, we'll sort of dive into first Ohno, which was Rob's first creation. She was, technically the oldest, but had a very childlike kind of look to her. That said, very much also the kind of nagging mother hen as well. Never really planned for a toy line, but at least was sort of, had some importance within the plot in the sense that she was, along with Rob, the Orbots commander, kind of the final circuit, the real, kind of missing ingredient to make the Mighty Orbot giant robot go. I would say one of the main, breakout stars from the cartoon, arguably the most popular for some pretty obvious reasons, would be Bo Roboti. Although she and her sister Boo were, essentially twins, they had slightly different colorations, but Bo specifically was much more, confident, assertive, a little bit of a practical joker, and also just very sexy. She vamped, she posed, she was doing, a lot of this sort of like winking at the camera long before Chitara came on the scene. Likewise, her powers were much more based around sort of the four elements, as it were: fire, earth, wind, etc. In a strange bucking of expectations, she and her sister formed the arms for the Mighty Orbot, as opposed to, say, Princess Allure's leg. Bo, on the other hand, was much more kind of timid and shy compared to her much more outgoing sister. That said, she had sort of very almost Sue Storm, Invisible Woman kind of powers with a lot of like bending light, teleportation, invisibility, force fields, that kind of thing. All of it kind of sort of seemingly magic compared to the perception of other characters. Although this came out a year prior, these two characters in particular definitely remind me of Silica from Star Chaser, The Legend of Warren, in 1985. And if you've ever seen it, you know exactly the scene I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen it, give it a look. I might cover it one day. The show only ran for 13 episodes from September to December 1984. It was sort of American made, but very much, brought in a lot of like anime talent to, conceive of, direct, produce, animate. The actual animation was gorgeous. There's really nothing else quite like it. And I think that's really one of the big reasons that it's got such a fervent fan base since. It's not a huge property that people, talk about all the time, but the fans know. And after watching it, I get it. Nevertheless, it was doomed, not necessarily by its own making, maybe a little bit. It definitely sort of dove in amidst the early Transformers versus GoBots war, and it was actually, funnily enough, Tonka who sued the makers of Mighty Orbots, saying that, this brand diluted their brand somehow, which is, it's rich coming from GoBots, given that, they certainly didn't win the robot wars themselves, and, really, if anything, Mighty Orbots was more derivative of, again, Voltron or, say, the combiners from Transformers. Nevertheless, did it help GoBots? You tell me. Nevertheless, the lawsuit did certainly, put a wrench in things. It came very early in its first run, and, essentially Mattel, who was at least prototyping, if not making a, wide production sample of the toys, were, certainly interested and certainly, like, ready to go, but, the series was on and off the air super fast. The lawsuit eventually got settled, but by that point, it was done. The series had essentially concluded. Mattel sort of did away with the prototypes. It was kaput. Among these prototypes, you would have seen essentially the core team: Tor, Crunch, the most common name, Bort, as well as Boo and Bo. They look a little janky, let's be real. But when you do compare them to their compatriots with Transformers and GoBots, not bad. I mean, they do look like the cartoon, at least in the face, at least in the general construction. And I mean, if you've ever seen the RC prototype or picked up the recent, Missing Link one, I mean, that's, I guess, the style of the time. Was a little janky. So long as the actual, the bigger piece, looked as it should, these were not bad figures, and they were sort of, I would say, again, particularly amongst the hardcore fans, direly missed. Since its original Blink and You Miss It airing and the unproduced toys, there's not been, I would say, a lot of demand for it, certainly amongst the hardcore fans, but, for them, if you really wanted one, there was a Korean-made knockoff called Unrivaled Obot, which didn't quite look right, but you could probably repaint it and finally get yourself a Mighty Orbots figure. Nevertheless, Mighty Orbots fans rejoice. In late 2025, there was a Kickstarter, on Kickstarter no less, from Machine Dream Toys, which were, had somehow gotten the license to make essentially the prototype for the Mighty Orbots from Mattel. They sort of took a lot of the, the concept art from that, really kind of try to inject, die-cast parts and pieces into it. They try to make it as authentic to the original prototype as possible. Also very interesting in this Kickstarter is that, you get the big dogs, let's say, but also they're including, Ohno, who's essentially a little PVC figure to go along with the Kickstarter. But nevertheless, it's just great to see her. Time of recording, they're in tooling right now, but I mean, the renders looked incredible, and it really did sort of, kind of ignite conversations around the Mighty Orbots and really sort of brought them back into the fold. And I would say, in particular, Dan Larson over at Toy Galaxy really pushed for this. He did a lot of live streams, trying to get this thing funded, and in fact, it did. It's, it's really a great testament, and I've said it many times before, this is my favorite kind of MIA-80 lady, where we finally do get what we were promised or should have gotten back in the day. So, did not back it, kind of regretting it. But for those fans, you're finally getting your wish to come true. That said, the man behind the Kickstarter, Albert Pinello, did pass away just days before the Kickstarter ended. Nevertheless, his love of the toys, and I think his legacy as part of this, the Mighty Orbots conversation, the production, the franchise itself, I think that will endure. And his passion in this toy, in this project, it shows through. So I R.I.P. friend. And that'll about do it for Boo, Bo, and Ohno from the Mighty Orbots. I walked into this video and this research very much kind of with some preconceived notions. I was surprised to find that the big brawler dude had pink accents and was the leg, whereas I was going in thinking that, kind of almost the Voltron, Princess Allura, even like Yellow Ranger kind of mentality, where it's like, oh, well, the girls are legs. They can't possibly be the arms. That would be crazy. So even I have some sexism to work on, apparently. So with all that said, I thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, all those YouTubey things. And I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies.